Welcome to another edition of the Power Connector podcast. I'm your host, Derek Dickow, where I sit and interview in a conversation people that I have interest in, people that I admire and respect in business, and people that have achieved a certain level of success through relationship building and what I like to call a curiosity conversation, just getting to understand them a little bit more and then sharing with you some of the insights and wisdoms that we can learn from them. My guest today is Gideon Pfeffer, a managing partner and CEO of GSH, a company that's currently valued at more than $1 billion with 6,500 and counting multifamily units. Certainly somebody that we'd like to learn from today. So welcome to the show, Gideon. Good to see you.
Yeah, Derek, thanks, man. It's good to be here today.
Yeah, likewise. Well, I've been interested to have this conversation with you for a while. Not many people at your age have amassed a portfolio and also interest in growing and expanding. And you've got a runway ahead of you for the next 15 to 20 years that I think is dynamic and worth sharing. So welcome to the show. I'll start this conversation as I start every conversation in asking people what's new and exciting.
That's a great question. I don't mean to correct, right? Especially on my opening bit, but gosh, I wish that we were a unicorn and worth $1 billion. Our portfolio is worth $1 billion. We're doing okay, but yeah, we are growing. We are growing, which is awesome. What's new and exciting? I mean, the market has shifted. Interest rates are high. Inflation is still around, but it's getting a little bit under control. And we're still dealing with some of the aftermath in real estate in general, and as it relates to, the COVID-19 pandemic. But so, pain is never exciting, but I think that through, market shifts and some adversity comes opportunity, right? So that's kind of what's exciting to me is that, when we started building our portfolio in 2017, some people said to me, "Are you sure you want to be buying? We might be at the top of the market," and that kind of freaked me out. But I decided to buy anyway, and thank God that I did. And now, we've hit the top of the market, late 2021, early 2022, and now we're kind of in a bit of a mild reset in terms of values, just because cap rates go up and they chase interest rates, and so, there's value out there, and so that's exciting to me is to find new and exciting opportunities in a shifting market dynamic.
So take me back to beginning 2017. You made a decision at that point. What kind of factors help you to decide that multifamily would be the niche for you? And did you see yourself, 6 years ago, arriving at this place that you're at today, or did you have different plans, or are you right in line with where your development mindset was in 2017?
That's a great question. And as I'm listening to the question, I'm thinking to myself, one of my bits, one of my shticks is saying, like, I never really had a plan. I actually admire folks who, go to college with a plan and a focus, and they get out and they execute on that plan, throughout their career. And I always kind of liken myself to like that feather in Forrest Gump, just kind of like floating around, kind of like, Forrest ended up in a lot of different interesting circumstances by no design of his own. And I think early in my career that was the case. Prior to GSH, I had done a significant amount of single family aggregation. And what that means is buying houses in bulk, packaging them up and selling them to larger institutional buyers. And so I did probably over 3,000 houses between 2010 and 2015, and I was tired. And it was actually my wife, Jamie, who helped me kind of settle in, and we worked together to figure out what was the next step in our life, in our life path, in the career. She's a really smart lady and has a master's in organizational development and has always been involved in the business, but more along the lines of kind of just being a confidant and a coach for me. And we took 2016 to figure out like what was the next step. And we came to multifamily, building a multifamily portfolio would help us achieve some goals. It'll help us to, make money, which is always a goal, but also create passive income and hopefully generational wealth. Because I'm good at doing things at scale, but in the house flipping business, if you will, even though we were doing it at scale, you kind of have to, you wake up on January 1st and you have to do it all over again, right? So multifamily was a way to achieve scale and to achieve some of these other broader goals for us. So the plan was to, my goal was to buy 5,000 units in 5 years. And we exceeded that goal. So our goal is to be at 20,000 units in the next 5 years. The past year hasn't cooperated with that goal because it's kind of been hard to see where the opportunity lies. But we've got a great platform now. I've got an amazing team, supportive partners. And so we have the ability to scale up at that volume as opportunity presents itself.
What have been some of the biggest challenges for you in terms of learning the business? I mean, you have some experience in real estate, but multifamily is a different animal in and of itself. Is dealing with banks, appraisals, management of the operation and leasing. It's a whole different animal. So in terms of your development as the leader of GSH, what was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome to get you north of that 5,000 number in position today to maybe hit 20 in the next 5 years?
Picking one is probably difficult. I think actually something that we're going through right now organizationally is probably the biggest opportunity to be able to achieve that, the next level of growth. And that's really like setting up the organization for success. I'm very entrepreneurial. I'm a good salesman. I'm a relatively smart individual, but I don't have, I always worked for myself. So I don't have the organizational experience in terms of how a lean and healthy and fully functioning organization should run, and be able to achieve scale. Luckily, my wife does, with her master's degree. And so she's really partnered with me over the last 2 years now, since the beginning of 2022. And I asked her to come into a more active role and be the head of organizational development at the organization to help set up our platform, set up, some more structure from as it relates to just a hierarchy, to expectations, job descriptions, ongoing evaluations, healthy feedback, things that team members expect. I've learned that not everybody thinks like me, right? Not everybody is just motivated by the next deal. Some people are very comfortable working that 9 to 5 and then having a much better work-life balance, if you will. And so understanding that and understanding what motivates a team outside of what motivates me has been, I think, beneficial, but also a challenge for me.
Have you been able to cultivate mentors along the way? I mean, have you picked up the phone and called somebody that has a portfolio of, let's say, 20,000 multifamily properties, cold call them and just ask for advice? Has that been helpful to you?
I've actually done that, yeah. So in my 20s and early 30s, as I was coming up doing a significant amount of single family, my partner at the time and I'll speak for myself. I had a lot of pride, not as much humility, and I didn't ask for advice. I didn't ask for help, and I think I probably would have saved myself some heartache, maybe made a few less mistakes, I'd like to think, which ultimately just cost you money, right? If I had asked for help, if I had asked for some mentorship. I had some folks in the real estate business that I became close with, but I never was super vulnerable and wanted to admit if things weren't going well or if I had questions. I didn't want to act like I didn't know. So that's one thing that I've tried to do differently in this new venture. There's a lot of things that I've done differently in this new venture, learning from my experiences and mistakes from the past. But yeah, so to answer your question more directly, there are two individuals specifically that I met in my, we keep a place in Florida, and up until recently we were full time in Florida and kind of coming back and forth as needed, homeschooling our daughters and kind of living a little outside the box, kind of like snowbirds. Now we're back in Michigan full time, but there were two guys in Florida. One who at the time, just a couple of years ago, I met at his kid's birthday party. His kid went to the same school as my daughter. Turns out that he was the managing partner of a significantly large real estate arm of a large private equity group, with, $4 or $5 billion of assets under management. And so he gave me time. First we met, we hit it off, and then from time to time I'd visit with him or give him a call, and I'd learn about how he grew, how he structured, and sometimes would ask. He gave me feedback on certain offerings that I was giving and that I was putting out to investors and things like that. So that was very helpful. And there was another guy who has like 65,000 units, like literally 10 times as many as I have, who kept an office literally 10 minutes from my place in Florida. And we were introduced, and same thing, he would give me time at time. And I think that these guys, one of them even said out loud, like, happy to pay it forward, happy to help. There were guys who helped me along the way. Recently, GSH isn't immune from some of the challenges that higher interest rates have given. We purchased some properties that have variable rate interest rates, and we're working through that and the challenges that entails when the Fed decides to raise interest rates 10 times in a year. And so I've reached out to some guys locally here in Michigan, who had been through the last downturn. I mean, I experienced the last downturn, but not in such a substantial business capacity. I dealt with the effects and took advantage of the outcome. Low purchase prices on real estate and benefited from that. But guys who got stuck, had to work out situations that they were in, I've confided in, and that's really, gosh, I wish I did it sooner. It helps because I've gotten validation, I've gotten reinforcement of things that we're doing to work through some of our own challenges, are right on the right path, and also some ideas, which is cool.
So if you could go back maybe to your early 20s, you'd tell yourself to lower the pride a little bit, raise the humility, be humble enough to ask for support.
It's okay to not pretend like you know everything, because the truth is most people already know that, right?
And we know that we don't know everything. I tell people all the time, I go to sleep at night sometimes reminding myself how little I know, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
But telling others and being able to ask for advice and support and maybe how they would go about solving a certain problem, I think that's the key to how we grow, right?
I think that, I agree 100%. I actually think that the more time that goes on, the less I know. I have a lot of experience that proves useful in certain circumstances, but I've got to remain humble, like you said, and teachable and open-minded, that my way might not always be the best way, or my idea might not always be the right idea. I think that's when real success starts happening, right? Because my way can get me so far, but it can't get me all the way.
I agreed 100% with that. Let's go back to the two mentors that you've mentioned that you met sort of through introductions, through your daughter's schooling and through her network. Was there anything in particular that they advised you to do in your come up that put you in this position today? Was there one specific piece of advice, or was it just, hey, you have access to me, let's cultivate a friendship. If you have an issue, you can always send me a text or pick up the phone. But in addition to that, was there one or two pieces of advice that you were able to take away that were really significant to your success today?
So I'm gonna actually give my wife credit on this question, because she is often, I was about to say always, probably always more intentional she than myself, and she gently suggested at times for me to take steps back and to focus, to think before I act. I'm kind of like a say yes and figure out how kind of guy. And that works for entrepreneurs. And I think it's necessary at times. And there's also times when some not acting on first instinct, sitting back and contemplating a situation, or I might get an email that might throw me off or something. And instead of immediately responding, like taking a day until I, have time to think about it, she helped me get into a routine of, waking up early and taking time for myself, like through some meditation and journaling and grounding myself every morning. Things come, right? Things come. If I'm grounded and I'm not waking up and running immediately into email and to work, I'm able to see the chessboard a little bit clearer, and that type of routine she's always been good at, and I try to model that. That's probably the best advice for growing my business that I've had. In terms of the gentleman that I talked to earlier, it was more like transactional, advice. They've been helpful. My impression of a mentor is somebody that really takes someone under their wing and really teaches them. I can't say that I've really had that in my life. Well, in my life in business, maybe there were opportunities that I passed up earlier on. The more I'm willing to ask for advice and help, the more I find that people are willing to give it, right? And that's where like those gentlemen come into play. But I think it's more about being around those guys, being around the energy of that type of success, and understanding that it takes time, right? Like GSH has been around for 6 years, right? And we've built a great portfolio. And my brain is always about, like, I wake up and I want, more, and I'm behind. And I think that drives me. So I look at a gentleman who's got 65,000 instead of the 6,500 that I have. And I'm like, man, I'm so far behind. But the truth is that guy's, 20 to 25 years older than I am, and has been doing this specific type of business for 25 to 30 years, and I've been doing this specific business for 5, so like, it helps me realize, like, oh, I'm really not behind, right? Relatively speaking, I'm actually keeping good pace from where my ultimate goals might want to be.
So you found that the more you're willing to ask for advice, the more that people are willing to share with you, and that helps you along your path. I would love to go back to the point you said about the way you start your day, because I think that there's a strong correlation to successful entrepreneurs and leaders in the way that they attack every day. You mentioned specifically not diving right into the emails. Would you be willing to share what your morning, how you start the morning? I mean, everybody's different, right? I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you attack.
I'd be happy to. So, and this is developed over time, and at any given time between, today and the last 10 years, let's say, if you take a snapshot at various times, it might look a little bit different, but a general variation. I'm waking up and I'm getting myself in order, right? Maybe I'm using the restroom, maybe I'm grabbing a cup of coffee, drinking some water. But then I'm getting back to a quiet place, and I'm closing my eyes, sometimes in silence, sometimes with a little bit of like light music without words, like spa music or whatever, meditation type music. And I'm meditating basically for anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes. Often I'll have like a journal next to me. And what I've learned about meditation is that, like, there's not a one size fits all. So I might drop into meditation and 2 minutes later open my eyes and write down a thought that comes to me. I might meditate for 10 minutes and not write anything down, right? But I'm trying to clear my mind and allow that any thought that comes in, you know, if it's not an important thought that I want to remember or write down, I allow it to pass by without judgment. It's okay that I'm thinking about stuff, and I'm just going to let it go by like a conveyor belt. Clearing out my mind helps settle me. Then I'm taking my journal and I'm writing down some of the things that came to me. I'm writing down right now what I'm feeling, because sometimes I run into a problem by not identifying how I'm feeling, and then when I'm stuffing down feelings, they come out in random, not so great ways throughout the day. So, you know, how am I feeling in the morning? Often I'm feeling anxious about something. I might know what I'm feeling anxious about, but usually it's a conversation. I might feel nervous about doing this podcast with you. Like, who knows what it is, right? Conversation I had yesterday, something I got to do this afternoon, a meeting I'm not looking forward to. There's always stuff there. There's always stuff, right? Yeah. So I acknowledge that. And there's also often competing emotions, right? I could feel excited, anxious, hopeful, fearful, all at the same time, right? I've learned that there can be competing emotions. I don't just have to feel good all the time. I don't just have to feel nervous or bad all the time. So I'm writing down how I'm feeling. Then sometimes I'm writing about what's making me feel that way and acknowledging it. Then I'm usually spending some time on maybe some strategy that comes often in meditation. Strategy comes up, like clear thinking, clear thoughts about things that are going on with me professionally or personally, right? So I'm trying to capture those in writing. And then I'm writing down 10 things I'm grateful for. Because I find that gratitude helps me have a positive attitude throughout the day. If I'm grateful for what I've got, then I'm not down on what I don't got, right? Because I have this, again, I have this desire for more. And I think that it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in business because it drives me to be more successful, to get more, to be bigger. And sometimes when I'm focused on wanting more, I'm missing out on what I've got. So if I focus on gratitude, and really being grateful and content with what I do have, then I can detach from the outcome of more, right? Like, it's okay to have great big goals. I think it was like Deepak Chopra. I was listening to something from him years ago, and he was like, you know, have the big goal, but can you detach from the outcome, right? That's the trick, right? You know, go after that big, heavy, hairy, gigantic stretch goal, but be detached if you're going to achieve it or not.
Yeah, and be mindful and thinking about every morning what you're happy about, what you want to celebrate. Is that list, does it change every day, or are you thinking about the same things?
I've got a few things that I'm always grateful for.
Sure.
And then I try to switch up like the second half of the list.
Okay.
And some days, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, some days it's a challenge. And some days I could write 15, 20 things very easily. You know, I don't have to be grateful for a bunch of profound things. I can be grateful that I went swimming with my 10-year-old yesterday. I can be grateful for my new shoes that give me proper arch support. Like, you know, who knows? You know, but it can be simple.
Let's go through the process of acknowledging it and being mindful enough to write it down and say, you know what, I have a lot, I've achieved a lot. Yeah, I want to go in this direction where there's a lot more. But in order for me to get there, I have to be present and thankful that I have achieved and I have these things. And some of them are experiences, and some of them are family, and some of them are in the well-balanced that we'd like to talk about. I'm interested to learn a little bit more about health and wellness and how you incorporate that. So the meditation part, I love that aspect of starting your day that way, not diving right into the 150 to 200 emails that you're going to get every day. What sort of ways are you taking care of your health and wellness outside of that?
Well, I lucked out, and I keep going back to my wife, but you know, she's my partner in life, right? But in business, and she was a mindfulness and meditation teacher, and a business coach to entrepreneurs. And so that's really, these practices and ideas are really woven into the fabric of not just our business life, but our family life and our day to day. For me personally, I've got a lot of energy. Like I've learned that, like I've got my coffee mug here, but it's decaf coffee, right? Like I learned a few years ago that I don't need caffeine in the morning or at all really throughout the day. So I wean myself off of caffeine. And I wake up every day with a lot of energy. Let's say that. So I need to ground that energy somehow. Like it's good, but it needs to be under control. How do you harness that? So I do the exercise, the mindfulness exercises, the meditation. I also need to exercise. I need to exercise my body. So for me, it's like mind, body, family, and spirituality. Right? Those are things that I'm always trying to keep in balance. Right? And so in my marriage too, right? So it's like myself, my marriage, my family, my body, my mind, and my health. So I just went from 4 to 6 things. It's kind of like
a couple more minutes.
A lot. Yeah, there's probably more. But I've got to get on my bike and ride. If it's nice outside, I've got to get downstairs and exercise, lift some weights, get on the elliptical machine. I'm not perfect at it, but I try to do it, 4 or 5 times a week. And that helps ground me. I also, you look like a healthy guy, like being mindful of what I'm eating, being mindful of when I'm eating more than I need, right? Like for me, that's like kind of a sign for me that maybe something's bothering me. If I'm eating when I'm not hungry, or if I'm, eating unhealthily, like I can be there have been plenty of times in my life where I've been very content on protein and vegetables, right? Which is like kind of like my healthy eating habit. And when I'm eating a lot of carbs or sugar or whatever, maybe there's something going on. And at the same time, wanting to live my life and have balance. So trying to like juggle all of that and what does it mean? But generally, eating well, moving my body, exercising my mind, quieting my mind, making sure I'm spending time and being present for my wife and our relationship, making sure that I'm being present for my children as much as they'll have me, and also taking care of myself at times. So like, what does that look like, I guess? There's usually like 1 day a week that I'll try and block out like a couple hours and maybe get a massage. Maybe my wife and I will go get our nails done together. It'll be like a little date, but that's some self-care. And then, prioritizing the healthy eating and exercise.
Yeah. And that for you has been a critical component, focusing on the balance in order to maintain your sanity throughout the day. I mean, 6,500 units is not a small feat, right? And there's a lot of problems that come up, and it's just, we kind of, as leaders, I guess we kind of welcome the problems because we know that we can solve them. And if we can't, we know who to go to help get that information. But it seems like you draw a lot of source of power from your relationship with your wife, which is exceptional. Not a lot of people do that, right? They like to kind of silo them off.
Yeah.
Home life is one thing, work life is another, but you seem to have found a good way to do both.
I think that, what we've got is definitely special. And part of it, I think, is just dispelling that societal norm or expectation that things should be separate, or that a husband and wife can't work together and have it work, have it be healthy. I mean, it's not without its challenges at times, but we learn, right? There's reciprocity, and we complement each other. And I think that's something that's really helped our relationship work. We've been just 2 days ago, I was mentioning before that we started taping, May 28th was our 17th wedding anniversary. And I'm very much more extroverted. I'm the salesman. I'm a people person. I thrive and get energy amongst groups of people. I'm much more surface level when it comes to being organizationally minded. Jamie, my wife, is much more detail oriented. She's more introverted. She enjoys being with people, but smaller groups of people. She needs to recharge away from people. being in large groups for a long period of time is more draining for her than it is for me. But she's much more detail oriented and organizationally minded. And so I didn't ask her to come in and help me raise money. I asked her to come in and help me establish the infrastructure of the business so we can support real growth now that we are at this place. And that's a place that not only I don't have the expertise in it, I also don't have the patience for it, right? So that's another reason why we work, because we are the balance of opposites, which works out well for us.
So the key to success with working with a spouse is reciprocity, a balance of power, and what else?
I think that, like I said earlier, humility, checking the ego at the door, which I'm not perfect at. Like none of the things that I say today, I'm not perfect at, right? I'm a work in progress.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. But like when I asked her to come into the business because I needed help. And then I put up resistance when she was making suggestions on things that I wasn't maybe doing as well as they could have been being done, right? My ego, started to flare up at times. And so I even found myself getting like upset or angry with her when she was doing things that I asked her to do, right? And she was like, dude, like, I'm here helping you. You asked me to do this and you're getting upset with me for doing it. Like, what's the deal here, right? And I had to like, okay, well, what's going on with me? What's going on with me? If I'm upset, there's something going on with me, right?
Right.
There might be a reason on the outside that has triggered something in me. But there's something going on with me, and I got to figure that out. You talked about challenges within an organization as leaders. We welcome challenges. We know that we can work through them. If I'm not grounded, then I'm frantic. If I'm wrapped up in that tight spring of anxiety that I can go to pretty quickly, just naturally, there's that energy transference from me to my team. So do I want to exude fear and anxiety to my team? How are they going to respond to that? How are they going to be efficient? I'd much rather exude, calmness and confidence, despite whatever positive or challenge that we're going into. Like, it's not that I don't have concerns, but what I do know is that everything's going to be okay, because it always is. Every crisis in my life, or mini crisis, major crisis, or things that I created as crisis in my mind, never turn out the way that I think they will, or as bad as they will. So if I can hold on to the idea with some faith, I think for me, that I'm going to be okay, then I'm able to like hold on to that level of calmness. And I think a big piece of that is that I've got this amazing partnership with my wife. And I know that regardless if we're like on top of the world or the mountain, or we're sitting in a ditch, like our love and admiration of one another is not going to really change. And so I'm able to like confront challenges knowing that, like, understanding that, like, I'm good, I'm loved, I'm cared for. And at the end of the day, like, that's really what I need. Like, when it boils down to like, what are my core needs? It's like, I need to be loved, and I need human connection, and I don't want to feel like I'm going to be abandoned. Right. And so I can remind myself that I've got that with my partner, with my wife, but with others, in my close relationships, then all this other stuff is just stuff. It's just energy, right? It's just things that are going around that have impact, but I can be calm in any kind of storm that comes around.
Yeah, you definitely have that demeanor of someone that has a really solid level of confidence. It's calm. It's not calculating, but it's your approach is what I admire in terms of your business acumen and where you're at. You also have done a great job of cultivating relationships with a variety of leaders from many different businesses in this community and throughout. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you approach such a high level group of people that you network with, that you build relationships with, and learn a little bit more about the secrets to how you do that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the compliment.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. And I keep talking about my wife, but I always feel bad. So I'm, like I said, I'm more extroverted. I'm more the one to have these type of conversations or be recorded or whatever. However, I'm sure Jamie would be more than willing to come in and chat with you sometime about her journey, which I think that, the impact it has on business people is really amazing. That's why she coached so many for so long. But I really can't take credit. I mean, I have to do the work and I exude the calmness and whatnot, but like she was really the catalyst. She's the spiritual pioneer of our family. I'm lucky enough to like ride her coattails on that stuff, and it has a great effect. As it relates to your question, I would go to conferences, right? You go to conferences as a real estate guy, and when I was maybe 10 years ago, I would go and I would look at all of these people in the conference, and I'd create an illusion of how successful they were, right? And then I started GSH, and I started going to conferences, and I might have had 1,000 units at the time, or 1,500, or 2,000, and I'd look at people who had 6,500 units or 10,000 units, and I'd be like, wow, like these guys are so successful. Like, I just wish I could get there. And then I'd talk to them, and sometimes I'd be super impressed, and sometimes I wouldn't be impressed. And sometimes, well, I shouldn't say sometimes. I eventually got to the place where I realized that like every person has talents. Every person has strengths, some people might be smarter than me. Some people might be more personal than me. But we're all kind of the same. Like what I realized was that for the most part, the people that I was kind of putting up on a pedestal of like major success, whatever, weren't that much, I don't know, smarter, better, whatever than I was. They just, through their circumstance, through their effort, through opportunity, luck, hard work, whatever it was, have achieved a level of success, right? What I saw over the course of GSH was that we would go to similar conferences, every year. And the conferences that 6 years ago, I was like the small guy, by, 2020, 2021, I was the big guy. I was the guy that I was looking at 4 years earlier being like, I wish that I was that guy. That guy's so smart, right? And it was just time. It was just time and effort. So taking that correlation to people that we perceive as, or maybe that we put on this pedestal because of their title, because of the amount of employees that they might have or what they've built. The truth is that they're really just like you and me. They're just people, right? Their circumstances are different. And so, I have my own business, so I put the title CEO on, and I fulfill CEO duties for GSH. So I'm at the same level now as any CEO around town, right? The dollars that we're dealing with are substantial, and I walk into every room with that mindset, right? That I'm not less than or greater than, right? Like that's also a big challenge in my personal life. Can I just be neutral with everyone that I go about? Unfortunately, at times I have a tendency to judge, right? I'm standing online at Starbucks and I'm thinking to myself, am I better? Am I one up or one down than this person? Am I one up or am I one down? It's very exhausting, right? It's a person that I've never even met and may not ever talked to. Like, what's the point? Who cares, right? So can I just be at a human level with everyone, regardless of if they're someone that works for me or somebody that is a role model for me, right? And then can I go in with, with levity, directness, authenticity, and humility into every conversation, right? So for me, I try to say like, what you see is what you get, right? I don't have a problem in a modest way sharing the successes that we've had. I also don't have a hard time talking about the challenges that we faced, right? But that's not who Gideon was a decade or more ago, but that's along the lines of that humility and less pride, more humility, and checking my ego at the door.
I love that. And I think it's a point to further, just for a couple of reasons. We all, not all of us, but a lot of us that want to further ourselves and growth and advance, we're a part of these professional organizations. And it's important to take time from our annual calendar to attend the right conferences and to be around the smarter people that have done it. However we define what success is, but sometimes we look at aspirationally, all right, that's where I want to go. And you have to be in the right room. Yeah. And I love the point you make about when you walk into that room in 10 years ago, you aspire to be, and then the more time the more time you commit to that program or to that conference, or by networking with people in that room, the more you realize, yeah, I'm going to help a few people along the way. Now I'm sort of middle of the pack. And then all of a sudden you arrive at the top of the pack, but then you look back and you're like, it took so long to get there, but it's just time in, right? And that's what it takes.
I heard something that Matthew McConaughey said, and it's something that I was saying. I don't know who thought of it, probably neither of us, but it was like, I'm always chasing my 5 years from now self, right? If my 5 year ago self saw where I was at today, he'd be thrilled. He'd be like, dude, you made it. You're there, and today but my today self is always going after my 5 year from now self. Right. So, what I learned is that when living in Florida is that there's always going to be somebody with a bigger boat.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
There's always somebody with a bigger boat. So it's like, I got to be grateful with the boat that I've got. I don't own a boat, but like the metaphor is that it goes back to that gratitude point that we were talking about earlier. I am at that specific conference. Now I'm the bigger guy because it was like a middle market multifamily conference that we went to. And I'm pretty small as it relates to a bunch of other operators. I'm kind of in that middle ground, but you know what? Like the same access and time that those two gentlemen down in Florida give me, I'm now giving to people who are up and coming, right? Who are starting to build their portfolio. And I've done some other podcasts and people reach out to me, and when I can, I respond, and I've met some great up and comers, and they're so appreciative of my time and so respectful of the time. And I think that's cool because those guys who I aspire to are like, I want to pay it forward. And like, that's how I feel as well. And I guess the loop just kind of goes on and on.
True circle of life. Yeah. What, somewhere along this line, and I don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or a year from now, someone's going to pick up this audio and watch this, and they're going to say, I want to buy my first 150 unit building.
Right.
What advice would you have for them outside of maybe, check recent sales, check NOI, right, market conditions, but overall in terms of them taking the leap of faith and believing in themselves as an entrepreneur? If you could give them one or two or three pieces of advice that would really help propel their business, what would it be?
I would be positive. I would say that's great. There's a lot of questions underneath that I, like you suggested, I won't get into, but I think that I'll say, I don't want to sound cynical, but like, be careful what you wish for. Right. I think that there's a perception at times with the number, right? If I only have 650 units, I want 6,500 units. If I've got 6,500 units, I want 65,000 units, right? But with all of that growth comes a greater weight to carry, greater responsibilities to yourself, to your lenders, to your investors, if you have any, to your employees and team members. So, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into.
Every business has brain damage, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's this perception, especially I shouldn't say especially, but real estate is one of those genres where you can go on Facebook or Instagram or online and YouTube, and people are talking about get into real estate because it's passive income, right? That was one of my ideas of doing multifamily. It'll be passive. I've never worked harder.
Yeah, right. People think it's so glorious and just
maybe
easy.
Maybe one day. I mean, it definitely affords a great lifestyle, a lot of opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
An important person to me said, money isn't everything, but it makes life easier,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's a lot of work associated with it. You can't just give it to a manager and expect that, because nobody's going to look at a property like you do, like
Mm-hmm.
an owner would. So you always have to be looking at it, whether it's you or you hire people to look at it. You got to look at over their shoulder, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a hard question,
So cautious optimism.
Cautious optimism.
Expect and hope for, and plan for bad days.
I'd say don't just believe the broker, right?
Right.
There's another older gentleman that's very, very successful in town who says, "I've never seen a pro forma I didn't like." And what that is a tongue-in-cheek statement that you can make any deal look good on paper
Mm-hmm.
in a spreadsheet. You adjust one or two assumptions, and all of a sudden it's a great return.
Mm-hmm.
The question is it really? Where is it? Where's the property located? What's the plan? Who's going to manage it? Where are the replacement tenants coming from?
And when shit hits the fan, which it definitely will.
Yeah.
What's the plan?
Yeah. Totally. So that's more than one answer,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But I think that real estate's a great business to be in. I think that it's a business that has a low barrier of entry, which is great because you can go out and you can buy a cheap house, like I did. I started out by buying one house with a friend, and we sold it and bought two more, and we sold them, and we bought four, and all of a sudden we were doing that 100 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Granted, it was post global financial crisis, and the houses we were buying were like $10,000 a piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they just got more and more expensive, which was great for us. But it takes work, just like anything else.
What has been your secret to success in terms of cultivating relationships with high net worth individuals, family offices, and nurturing those relationships to the point where not only do they believe in you, but they're willing to make introductions, which I think is the most important value that we bring to others, is our willingness to make introductions, saying, "Hey, I have confidence, I have faith, I believe in this person. They'll do a great job." What has been your secret to success in cultivating those high level relationships?
So, so at GSH we syndicate all of our deals. We never go under contract for a deal that we can't write a check for ourselves. And often those check sizes are really quite large. But then we'll syndicate, which means that we'll bring in investors behind us, and we'll stay in the deal, typically for 5 to 10% of the equity, and then have people invest alongside us. And I think that it's a lot of the statements that I said earlier, as it relates to just who I am, my demeanor. It's really a relationship that you're building, right? When somebody decides or is considering making an investment in you, they want to understand your experience, your track record, who you are as an individual, some of the successes you've had. They maybe want to understand some of the failures that you've had. And I think that ultimately they're vetting you out to see if they trust you. I recently had some conversations with some of my investors about, why do we choose a sponsor? How do we choose a sponsor like GSH and, or me or Gideon, right? And it's not for when times are good. It's for times are not good.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that this sponsor is going to stick by you and fight tooth and nail day and night to protect your underlying investment when things don't go as planned, right? That's really what you want in a sponsor. It's like a contract, right? Contracts you don't sign contracts for when in the beginning and when times are great. You sign contracts for if things don't go as planned.
Mm-hmm.
So the ability to be able to establish rapport and trust quickly has been a strength, I think, of mine. And then communication. We communicate more, I think, than most firms, whether it be multifamily investment firms or others. We do monthly updates on every single property. We're bucketing every investor group, and we're sending out individual cultivated emails every single month with a quick update. We're doing detailed reports every quarter. We're sending letters from me, industry insights, whatever. Like, we over inundate our investment group and individual investors with information and contact. It's up to them if they want to open the email, but it's there from us. And it's not like the weekly emails that you get that could go to spam that we're all deleting every day.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's valuable content that's mostly about their specific investment.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not, but and I'm accessible. I give everybody my cell phone number, right? I'm not some ivory tower CEO that nobody can get to, but what I find is the more accessible I make myself, the more people respect my time.
They have more confidence in you.
Yeah. So there's a handful of investors that I speak to regularly, and there's a lot that I never talk to. We've been going through some challenges with the market and interest rates going up, like I mentioned earlier. We got some deals that aren't going as planned. And GSH isn't immune to the greater market environment, but we're out in front of it. We're communicating a ton. I put out a significant report, educating, explaining, being very specific about every specific property. And then I did webinars for every individual property whose business plan might not be going according to plan, to be accessible, and people have the choice to look at it. They're recorded, they can see it. And I think that people can tell that my partners and my team care. And that has been probably one of the main reasons for our success.
So over-communicate.
Over-communicate.
And accessibility. Those have been two keys for you to help establish and nurture relationships with people that are important and people that you want to continue to grow with for the next 10 to 20 years on your path to 65,000 units someday.
That's 100% right. And going under the baseline understanding that, look, we actually know what we're doing, right? That we've got an infrastructure that's operating, but on a top level, theoretically, yeah, 100%, those two items.
How big's the company today? We mentioned the value of the company being north of $1 billion, 6,500 multifamily units today. And let's talk about employees.
So our portfolio is worth over $1 billion. But because because it's real estate and there's debt associated with it, and investor partners, the GSH probably isn't worth $1 billion, but it's worth a lot more than I ever expected. We've got about 25 employees. And I usually say the word team members. So I'm going to say we've got 25 team members. About 40% of those are in Michigan. The rest are spread out over a few different states. And we also have a team in Israel where my partner Shmulik, the S of the GSH, lives. I'm the G, if anybody didn't figure that one out.
Yeah. That's an easy one.
And great team, amazing team. We decided in going back to the health part of our conversation in 2022, at our 5-year kind of anniversary celebration, we had everybody into town to celebrate and to regroup and to look for towards the next 5 years. Jamie and I developed a GSH 2.0 or GSH 2.H, which was cultivating a healthy and high-performing team. And at GSH with a healthy and high-performing team, that's how we're going to attract and maintain high performers, our talent. What's going to be our competitive advantage in a economy and climate where the power is really with the team member, the worker, right? How do we keep people from looking for the next best thing besides just good pay, right? We create an environment and a culture that people want to be a part of. That's a big initiative that Jamie's architected and implemented, and I'm pleased to say that it's working. So probably spending as much of my time at the moment organizing and developing what that looks like, right, and really implementing what Jamie's architecting, as I am focusing on growth. Because without the right team in place and the right infrastructure, you can't grow.
Right. And then you have to surround yourself with people that have done it before to realize that anything is possible. And it just takes time, communication, accessibility. And I love the approach of the way you attack your mornings, because I don't think enough of us do that, the mindful meditation, and to really think and spend some time in gratitude, reflecting.
Yeah, and I think like people have everyone has a different version of mindfulness or spirituality. Some people, it might be a religion, right? So like if somebody's not into the idea of the word meditation, it could be the same amount of time in prayer or in, reflection, in reading, whatever it is. It's, I'm not perfect. I'll wake up and I'll check some emails, but not every day. Someday, but I can check some emails and then reset and then get into my practice. It doesn't matter when I'm doing it. And I can also reset my day any time during the day, right? Things start going off the rails and I'm having a hard time. I can step outside, take a couple deep breaths, walk around the block.
That was my next question.
Meditate again, right? Like I don't just have to do it in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't just have to do it once.
So that was my next question, was breathing techniques. And were you a proponent of that and cold showers? You do any of that stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So every shower I take, at the end, I make cold.
Yeah, I'm same.
Yeah, I make that cold, and that gets me going.
Mm-hmm.
Breathing techniques. So yeah, Jamie's taught me like box breathing. She pulled from Navy SEALs, right? Which is like you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. Do that in a few rotations.
It's amazing the reset that you have, maybe after 8 to 10 of those breaths, where you're like, oh wow, okay, I feel good.
What I've learned is that exercises like that pull you out of your amygdala, pull you out of that reptilian brain that we go to when we're threatened, right? So like there's that fight or flight response in all of us. So I'm either fighting, I'm getting defensive, I'm getting aggressive, I'm getting angry if I feel threatened, or I'm fleeing. I'm like, I'm out of here. Like, forget this, forget them, whatever, leaving, running. And it, for me, it could be an email, it can be a phone call. It can be a nonverbal cue. It can be the fact that this person hasn't responded to me, right? There's a million things that trigger me. It's crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm admitting all of this, because of the truth, but also in the hope that or expectation probably that people identify with some of it, because I think if we're human, we're triggered at times.
Oh, all day long.
Right.
And it's amazing to see what sets us off and what we can control and react to.
Right.
And they're not always aligned.
No. 100%.
And so our reaction to things have to be a little bit more intentional. And I like that you have that approach.
And it's a muscle, right? As I'm sure you know at this point. So it's like the more that I do these practices, the easier it becomes, and the quicker I'm able to respond to something that may upset me or trigger me. Like I said, right? Like if it's more of my routine and my go-to, then circumstances that might have been a big deal or upset me for long periods of time, day or two in the past, they don't, not nearly as long. I'm able to reset a lot quicker, But I got to be willing to do some box breathing, right?
The box breathing. I think the approach with gratitude, I think, is the most important one that I'll walk away from this conversation learning. I don't do it daily. I have a gratitude list. It changes every 90 days. The bulk of items stay on there, right? Family, health, some things that are really important to me. And then, I'll rotate things in and out that I'm thinking about in that moment. And it's nice to go back and look and say, oh, we've done a lot.
Right.
But there's a lot more to do, but that's because we're in the growth mindset mode of our businesses.
Yeah.
And it's not always numbers. Numbers are good. But I think my big takeaway from this conversation is also about people and how you communicate, how often you communicate, and that just being accessible is an important part of what you bring to the table in any relationship that you have.
Yeah. And I want to say this, I'm a capitalist. Like I And I also believe, for me, it's a spiritual principle to be the best version of myself. And I enjoy business. I enjoy deals. And in real estate, it's, we're measured by units or revenue or profit. Well, I say real estate, but business, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. That's my ultimate goal, is to amass, right? The challenge, and I think everything we talked about just now in this conversation, it's not about money being bad. It's not about goals and aspirations or motivation, drive, being a negative. By far, it's not. Those are all wonderful, wonderful things. I believe, and I try to live and act by the principle that, like, I can have all of those big goals, but I'm trying to not be defined by them, and I'm trying to have balance between where I am and where I want to be, so I enjoy the journey, and that I don't lose out on the gifts that journey provides me along the way, like my family, my children, my friends, my teammates, like all of the things, experiences, vacations, days off, self-care, exercise, health. I can have it all, right? And maybe I'm giving up a little bit of that end goal, but what would I rather have at the end, right?
Yeah, I think you've got it.
Yeah.
I think you're figuring it out. It's enjoying the moments along the way, well balanced, and staying in growth mode while also being thankful and grateful for all of life's blessings, because there's a lot of them.
Yeah. So did you expect this conversation to go in this direction?
Actually, I was open-minded, and
Yeah.
that's part of the process of having a curiosity conversation.
Yeah,
is
cool.
not defining based on questions that I have, but based on what is important to you and exciting to you, and discussing what you're good at and what we can learn from each other.
I thank you. I really enjoyed it, and I found that the more that I focus less on the attaining, but being in that growth mindset and opening myself up to receiving, while being in a healthy frame of mind, it comes. It comes.
It does. I agree. Yeah.
There's abundance for everyone. I don't think that there's a finite amount of it. It's how are we setting ourselves up to receive it, and it's a lot of fun.
It's like you said earlier, lowering the pride, raising the humility, a combination of that, combination of time in, which you referenced in terms of the events and the people that you surround yourself with. And then being, I think, an important part, I don't want people to miss this, but communicating, over-communicating. A lot of people don't do enough of that. And then being accessible. I love the fact that you're accessible to your people, your team. I think that that's an important part of it. And then also being calm throughout the whole process of it. Because some days are going to be good, some days are going to be bad, and some days are going to be a little mixture of all of that.
100%.
And I think the way you approach the start of your day is an important lesson for us all to take away from this. It's been great. We'll have to do this again.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation today with Gideon Pfeffer, managing partner and CEO of GSH, company based in Michigan with 6,500 multifamily units valued at a portfolio valued at more than $1 billion, growing someday soon. Maybe the number's 10,000, maybe the number's 20,000, maybe it's 65,000. I know you're not going to be defined by numbers, but I know that numbers are important because they help us keep measure and keep track of our growth. And so that's important. And this has been a great conversation. We'll see you on the next time for another edition of the Power Connector podcast. We'll see you soon.